Speaker, but I think there's one thing that we must start understanding, that every industry, every single industry that exists on this planet has got rules and regulations, Mr. Speaker, except politics. And what we are trying to do as a progressive country is to create rules and regulations so that politics can actually be a serious career, so that people can actually take politics as a career. When you grow up, you want to be a politician, Mr. Speaker. In that sense then, Mr. Speaker, I wonder why any sane legislator who is aspiring to be a governor will oppose that after 2 terms of them being a governor, or even 1 term of them being a governor, the highest seat in the county, that they would oppose, that they do not want to actually bring themselves down to the Senate, Mr. Speaker. It is because, Mr. Speaker, when you listen to the arguments that Senator Cherargei are giving, they're very premature arguments, Mr. Speaker. When you say that, they cannot imagine that Governor Susan, from being a speaker, would have been limited to this and that. Mr. Speaker, we even have term limits. We have a presidential term limit. And that has nothing to do with opposing or limiting someone's political career. It's simply streamlining the industry in politics, Mr. Speaker. I have also heard people quoting our Constitution, but they are forgetting to highlight that particular phrase that says unreasonable restriction, Mr. Speaker. Is it not reasonable that we say, because of the conflict of interest, we do not want you to serve as the judge and the jury? Sincerely, Mr. Speaker. We have had, even in this term, as I sit in this Senate, we have had former governors who somehow end up in committees that are playing oversight on their former administrations, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, there is conflict of interest. With respect to the former governors who are in this house, Governor Ali Roba, who's now a senator, and Mandago, Mr. Speaker. Governor Ali Roba is the chair of the Finance Committee, Mr. Speaker. The number of oversight activities that we are doing from previous administrations in those county governments, that he has to sit and actually be a prefect of his former colleagues, Mr. Speaker, is already a conflict of interest. So, Mr. Speaker, the spirit of this bill has got nothing to do with limiting anyone's rights. The spirit of this bill has got everything to do with oversight and ensuring that those who intend to take up these offices as governors particularly understand that no, you're not going to be a governor and then come and sit in the Senate to cover up the corrupt dealings that your administration was involved in, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in that sense, I also want to highlight that I have gone through the JLAC committee report on the same, Mr. Speaker, and I have seen that the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has strongly supported this bill, Mr. Speaker. That is an indication that even they feel the pain in terms of how do they hold these people accountable, Mr. Speaker. You have a former governor in corrupt dealings who is now a senator and enjoying the privileges of this house, Mr. Speaker. Some of those privileges being that they get to influence the spirit of the oversight committees, Mr. Speaker. How does the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission then, operate and actually independently, without any coercion, deal with a situation like that, Mr. Speaker? It is difficult. Sometimes you put so much expectation in these independent bodies, but when you look at the arrangement of our politics, it is impossible to deal with corruption, Mr. Speaker. This being one of the reasons, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, back to Article 38, which many people want to quote and come back and say, oh, Article 38 of our Constitution, talks about political rights, what you can and cannot do, what you must not take away from me in terms of political rights, Mr. Speaker. We are not saying that we are stopping former governors from vying. We are saying, just as we are talking about the term limits of the presidential candidates, Mr. Speaker, or the gubernatorial candidates, we are saying that we are putting a limitation that immediately after your tenure as a governor, Mr. Speaker, you have to cool off for 5 years. so that you do not have a chance or an opportunity to go to the Senate or to go to the county assembly to meddle with the affairs of your corrupt dealings to ensure that the oversight arm does not get to you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I've heard also Cherargei say that you might say that governors are not immune to oversight after they leave the office. Yeah, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we understand they are not immune. We understand that you can actually actively investigate a former governor. You can go ahead and, through the processes of this oversight house, put the petitions, have the committees go in and look at the audits, Mr. Speaker. But what we are saying is that the presence of that particular individual during that time of the audit, during that time of the investigation, the presence of that individual in that house is obviously going to affect the outcome in one way or another, either through intimidation, influence, or whatever it is within the peer in one way or another. It is common sense that when anyone is being investigated, even in a public office, you are asked to step aside. And the reason they ask you to step aside is so that you do not meddle with the affairs of the investigation, Mr. Speaker. So because we do not want to get into a situation where we have senators sitting in the House who are former governors, who are being investigated by certain committees, we cannot legally ask them to actually step aside from the Senate because they're being interrogated. So we are trying to clean up that space to ensure that in the event that there's any misappropriation of funds or corrupt dealings from these former governors, that they do not actually participate in cleaning up their mess while in the Senate, and they do not participate in influencing the wheels of justice, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill serves as a stopgap measure so that we do not have conflict of interest, Mr. Speaker. Because obviously, you anticipate, Mr. Speaker, that if there's an allegation that has been thrown to a governor who's sitting in the Senate at that time, Mr. Speaker, the human outright defense mechanism will be for that governor to try and see how to defend themselves, how to go out of their way to ensure that they are found innocent, Mr. Speaker, how to even talk to the colleagues who are here in Senate, to try to explain things in their personal view. We didn't use this money because of this, to try to influence and coerce the committee members within, who at that time, Mr. Speaker, are actually their peers, Mr. Speaker. So what we are trying to do is create a stopgap measure such that, because we know you are human, because we anticipate that you are actually going to try and influence the wheels of justice, Mr. Speaker. We are actually serving you with this opportunity of ensuring that you do not commit a further crime or commit a further sin in the eyes of the Lord. So we are putting you aside on those 5 years so that you can cool off in the event that you have any oversight that needs to be done in your government, Mr. Speaker, or your former administration. Mr. Speaker, I want to point out one thing that a lot of people do not see. And in that sense, I also, let me just say that I know that the Office of the Attorney General and the Kenya Law Reforms Commission they have actually voiced their, let's say, not really supporting, but they're saying that this might conflict with the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. We are legislators. We amend laws. And Mr. Speaker, so many times, whatever is in the Constitution is even declared unconstitutional by people who go to court, Mr. Speaker. So what we are doing is nothing new, Mr. Speaker. In fact, even in this spirit of creating this 5-year cool-off for Senate, Mr. Speaker, for governors, Mr. Speaker, the argument from the Attorney General's office is that if you are going to carry out this kind of amendment to governors, it should not be specific only to governors. In fact, the way I understood the feedback from the Attorney General and the Kenya Law Reforms Commission is that they're saying, why should you stop the governor from only vying in the Senate? They're saying that, in fact, you should stop the governor from vying to the upper house, the Senate, but because also the National Assembly conducts oversight that somehow, to an extent, could touch the county government, that they should also not vie in the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker. So, in fact, in my understanding of what these two agencies have given feedback, is they are almost encouraging us to say that it should not be limited that a governor who has finished their term can not only serve in the Senate, but they should also be barred from serving in the National Assembly and the County Assembly for a period of 5 years, Mr. Speaker, because all these houses serve as oversight houses. So you cannot discriminate that particular limitation to just the Senate, Mr. Speaker. And I agree, 100% I agree. And then there was a question by Senator Cherargei that why are you only targeting governors? What about the presidents or the deputy presidents? You know, should they come out of their term and be allowed to go to the National Assembly? I say absolutely not, Mr. Speaker. In fact, thank you, Senator Chimera, for bringing this thing, because this thing now, the more we talk about it, the more you realize that it should not just target the governors, Mr. Speaker. It should actually be extended to the president, to the deputy president, because in real sense, the same, the basis of this bill, if it is to safeguard and act as a stopgap measure, then can you imagine a situation where you have a president or a deputy president deciding that, okay, my people from my constituency actually, they want me to go back and represent them as a constituency member of parliament, Mr. Speaker. What will that mean, Mr. Speaker, in terms of oversight? What will that mean in terms of conflict of interest in the event that that administration of that deputy president or that former president was actually engaged in misappropriation of funds to an extent that was touching on funds that were going to projects in the constituency or other county levels, Mr. Speaker? I say, let us not be discriminatory towards governors alone. This should apply because we are trying to clean up politics. It should apply to any political seat, Mr. Speaker, that actually poses a conflict of interest. And that the presidential seat is a political seat. The deputy president seat is a political seat. Do not assume that the deputy president will not go back to Madeira to vie as a member of parliament, Mr. Speaker. Because if they want, they can. As it is now, that is how our constitution is, Mr. Speaker. In that sense, if we are saying governors have to have a 5-year cool-off period, then the president should, the deputy president should, and it should not be limited to the Senate. It should be extended that they cannot vie in the Senate, and they cannot vie in the National Assembly, and they cannot go to the County Assembly to become members of County Assembly. And Mr. Speaker, dare I say, they cannot go and hold a speaker's seat, Mr. Speaker, because all these seats are political and they play oversight. So I dare say that this is just, Senator Chimera has just scratched the surface and actually opened a can of worms. And whether we want to just ignore this because some of us, I know that Senator Cherargei is actually going to vie as the governor of Nandi, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sure because he knows he's very young, Senator Cherargei is actually younger than me, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure he has foreseen that he will probably only serve 1 term in Nandi. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I am very sure that the sentiments that he brought to the floor of the House is because he knows after 5 years, he needs to go back somewhere in the politics. And that would mean that he has to either come back to the Senate or to the National Assembly. Because, Mr. Speaker, not that he's not a political heavyweight, but in Nandi, as a politician, at the age of 38 going up, 40 and above, you've expired, Mr. Speaker. Nandi is one of the counties that has the youngest legislators, the youngest. That is where everyone at 40, Mr. Speaker, they start looking at you as an old wise man who should go to the Senate. So I'm pretty sure that in Senator Cherargei's calculations, he is very well conversant that he can only serve 1 term in Nandi. And therefore, as a governor, and therefore I'm sure he knew that he has to oppose this thing, because if this thing passes, after his 1 term, starting 2027, Mr. Speaker, after 5 years, Senator Cherargei has expired. And you know, that 5-year cooling period, if you are not too young, you automatically fade out of the political scene. So as he was giving his sentiments, I actually was empathizing with him because it was more from a selfish perspective, Mr. Speaker. Having said that, I want to say that thank you, Senator Chimera, for having the balls to bring this, having the courage to bring this to the floor of the House, because, Mr. Speaker, this House is very intimidating, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank him for actually deciding that he will go forth with this, whether or not he'll be supported. And You have my support. I think this is a good idea, and I hope we see it to fruition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Aroba. What's your point of order, Senator Karungo?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I know Senator Oroba just used the B word. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 110 that the debate of this important bill be adjourned till a later date, Mr. Speaker, because I believe once we have heard those who have contributed today, we have got the two sides of the coin, Mr. Speaker. And I believe by adjourning this debate, you give us an opportunity to go consult further. And remember, we are going on recess, so we are going back to our constituencies so that we ask questions and talk to our people, Mr. Speaker, so that when we come back, we'll be able to make an informed decision, and we are going to give the views of our people according to how we are going to collect it, Mr. Speaker. So I urge that the debate be adjourned until a later date. I invite Senator, my good friend, we are both Catholics, the Senator of Busia, Senator Okia Omtata, to second me.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am more Catholic than the Pope for the knowledge, for the information of Khalwale. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to second this motion of adjournment because the matter we are dealing with concerns an amendment to the Constitution, an extremely weighty matter that demands that the House be full, everybody be given a chance to contribute to it, and also, as my friend, the Senator of Kiambu has said, people go home and reflect. We have had the opening shots. We have had our opening shots on both sides, and we need to go and digest them. Then when we come back here, we come in with big guns so that we can do justice to the motion. I second.
Thank you, Senator Omtata. Honorable Senators, I find merit in the motion, and I now want to propose the question that the debate be now adjourned. I will allow 3 minutes for members to debate on this request in the motion. Very well. Honorable members, I now put the question that the debate on this particular bill be now adjourned. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Now, having heard that debate adjourned to the next sitting, we will rearrange the order paper, and we will deal with order paper, order number 32. Yes. Call out order number 32, clerk.
Order number 32, motion, adjournment of the Senate.
Majority Whip, you're moving this motion?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to move the motion for adjournment of this Senate to a date other than next week. Mr. Speaker, I move that pursuant to Standing Order number 31.3, the Senate do adjourn until Tuesday, 25th June 2024. Mr. Speaker, Standing Order number 31 says that except for the session commencing immediately after a general election, Regular sessions of this Senate shall commence on the second Tuesday of February and terminate on the first Thursday of December. In subsection 3, it then gives exception and say, subject to what I've just said, the Senate shall continue to be in session and may adjourn for such a number of days as it may determine in its calendar. Mr. Speaker, our calendar is determined, and it shows states that we should go on recess and resume on 25th of June, 2024. I therefore move that we adjourn and request the Senator for Draganidi, the distinguished Senator Mofire, to second this procedural motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I stand to support and second the motion for the majority whip, considering the fact that, Honorable Speaker, we have a marathon engagement as a Senate, as a House, since January. We have transacted very critical, crucial business for this House, and it is the high time, Honorable Speaker, that members should take a rest, considering the fact that, Honorable Speaker, we have torrential rains, which have caused havoc in quite a number of places in this country, and it is important for us, Honorable Speaker, as members of the Senate, to crisscross the county to check on those damages and maybe create some solutions for those problems that have been caused by those torrential rains. So, Honorable Speaker, I really want to congratulate the majority whip for having brought that motion, and I tender my congratulatory message also to the entire membership of this House for having diligently committed themselves to the business of this House.
Senator Mofire, you were meant to second, then if you needed to contribute further to the debate on adjournment, you do it. So kindly.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Well guided. I second.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question that pursuant to Standing Order 31-3, the Senate do adjourn until Tuesday, 25th June 2024. I will invite members to contribute to this motion on adjournment. I'll start with Senator Mungatana Danson.
Mr. Speaker, I want to rise to support this motion. And Mr. Speaker, like I always say, the independence of this House was earned. People imagine that we just go and we come and we go and we come. But Mr. Speaker, in the history, constitutional history of this country, Mr. Speaker, and we were there when the president had absolute power, Mr. Speaker. If something is happening in this House that the president doesn't like, he had the prerogative to dissolve this House. If it was a motion, if it was a bill, if it was anything that he didn't like, he had the prerogative of dissolution of Parliament. And members who have been elected will be sent home until the time the president sees fit that you should come back. So, Mr. Speaker, we should not take it for granted. And we should remind those who are new that we have come a long way. That now Senate can set its own timetable, free from the crutches of the executive. So, Mr. Speaker, we shouldn't take it for granted that we as a House are totally independent and we are able now to go, set our own timetable, go consult, come back when we can continue with the business of this House. So, Mr. Speaker, as we go to our various counties, I want to just take this opportunity to say how grateful I am to the people of Tana River for having elected me and all the contributions and the wonderful people that we have met here. As we go home to consult. And I know very many of us have been going over the weekends, but now we have a longer opportunity to consult. We shall look at the issues that are facing us. Mr. Speaker, one of the major issues facing our county includes the challenge of floods, Mr. Speaker. As we speak, Mr. Speaker, we have people who are still in camps, and it has been a very difficult time, Mr. Speaker. And at some point today, I had wished to speak on a statement concerning water scarcity. Can you believe it, Mr. Speaker, that people have been flooded, pushed into camps, and there is no water in the camps? Mr. Speaker, it's a very interesting situation where the Tana Water and Sanitation Company is not doing its duties. They are not doing what they are supposed to be doing, and people continue to suffer. Mr. Speaker, as we go, we also need to think about the business we have left here. And Mr. Speaker, I really hoped for an opportunity to speak to the motion, but as we agreed, we are adjourning so that we can reflect more. And I would invite my colleagues to reflect on this issue. William Taft, the 27th president of the US, served his presidency, and then he went back to Tennessee and was elected as a senator for Tennessee. The people wanted him to serve. So let's go and think about it. Me and you may not want that senator who was a governor to come and serve here. Let's go and think, let's reflect. What about the people? Why are we only talking about ourselves here? Why should we limit the rights of the people? So let's go and digest this thing again, Mr. Speaker. Bassirou Faye, the president of Senegal, who was elected in place of Ousmane Sonko, the leader of opposition. This young man is so young, and he's going to be serving, and if he goes the way he's going, Senegal now is shining. It's actually coming to the levels of where Kenya is. And Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking with the authority as the head of delegation to the Pan-African Parliament. I know what I'm talking about. This man, he is a celebrated person, only 44 years. Mr. Speaker, let's go and think about it as we go on this spending business. Can we say a governor who finished university, got elected, served his term, should not serve in the Senate if his people want, should not serve in the National Assembly if his people want? Why wait for 5 years? Let's go and think about it, and maybe when we come back, we will be able to persuade each other. And Mr. Speaker, I am one person that will always stand for the expansion of the political space, of the freedoms we have so much struggled for. Things that we were beaten in the streets, thrown around by a restrictive regime, Mr. Speaker. Now, to cramp that space, to restrict those freedoms, I think I will invite colleagues to go and think some more. If governors want to run, let them run. Let the people decide. If MPs want to run for president, for whatever, let us be, talk about an expanded space rather than a restricted space. Mr. Speaker, so I'm just saying that as we go, we reflect on some of these issues that we have left here pending. We reflect on the pending business in this House. Mr. Speaker, with those so many remarks, I want to wish fellow colleagues, fellow senators, a happy short recess, and we be careful on the roads at this time so that we can all come back safely. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support.
Thank you, Senator Mugatana. Honorable members, I still have a list of 3 more members who would like to speak to this motion. As you speak, as you contribute, kindly be mindful of the time because of the colleagues who are queued. Senator Karungu Thangwa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wish also to support the motion of adjournment of the Senate for the honorable members of this honorable House to go and replenish, rest, be with their families, their constituents, and of course, we need to know that good work ethics requires good rest ethics, Mr. Speaker. And if you remember, I have a bill pending here of holidays because I believe those who work extra hard require a day to reconnect with their families. Mr. Speaker, within this period that we are going to be on recess, despite calling it a break, it's actually not a break. It's a time to engage the public, to take stock of what is happening. We go to our villages, we talk to them. We go talk to our governors because we need them to understand, Mr. Speaker, that devolution is dying from within. Because previously, we used to say the national government was killing devolution. But today, governors are killing devolution. And I can give you an example of Mombasa, Mr. Speaker. A governor giving a roadside declaration, executive orders, that you cannot sell a particular crop or a particular good in his county. They have no power to do that, Mr. Speaker. So I think we take this opportunity to go and educate governors also. Because no governor has power to give an executive order that goes against any law, that goes against legal ethos, Mr. Speaker. If the governor of Mombasa wanted to ban what is banning, that is Mogoka, he could have just told the MCAs to pass the law. But again, the MCAs or the Assembly cannot also pass the law that goes against the national law. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying this is a period of engagement. Because of time, Mr. Speaker, and the Honorable Senator had contributed, can I be heard in...
What's your point of order, Senator Mugata?
Mr. Speaker, is the senator, did I hear the senator of Kiambu suggesting that a governor cannot ban, in particular the governors from the coast cannot ban, that the governors cannot take action to tame a habit that is killing a whole generation? Mr. Speaker, did you hear him say that, or suggest that in fact, that what is existing as law cannot be changed? Mr. Speaker, are we saying is the law for man or the man for the law? Mr. Speaker, when we were fighting for independence, it was said, Mr. Speaker, that the Constitution put the white man at the top and the black man at the bottom. Mr. Speaker, are we saying
Senator
if a law...
Your point is made. Your point is made. Resume your seat so that Senator Thangwa can particularly clarify on that. Take your seat. Take your seat. Senator Thangwa. Give him the mic. Give Senator Karungu Thangwa the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the Honorable Senator misunderstood what I said. Mr. Speaker, I said no governor can give a declaration that goes against the law. I did not even comment on the goods that he's making, because next time, Mr. Speaker, you hear a governor banning coconut in his county. You hear another governor banning ugali in his county. You will hear another governor banning mabuyu and korosho in their counties. What we are trying to say, Mr. Speaker, if you're banning anything, ban it within the law. Use the law that is there, Mr. Speaker.
Senator
and I support this bill.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Honorable Senators, it is now 6:30 p.m., time to adjourn the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until Tuesday, 25th of June, 2024 at 2:30 p.m. I wish you all a restful session.
life. At this conjuncture of circumstances is a unique opportunity, for I am grateful. My soul cherishes every moment of my stay, feeding the plethora of reminders. I congratulate you, President Dr. Ruto, on your recent successful state visit to the United States. It's a signal of God's favor, and at the same time, an increased accountability for the people of Kenya and Africa, for its diplomatic altitude. It's an inspiration for Africa that the delight is sincerely shared. I want to convey my special thanks on behalf of my family to the people and government of Kenya